Good morning, traders. It is Tuesday, July the 9th. Not a whole lot has really changed in our analysis over the last couple of days. Yesterday, we did get out of our crude oil play. This is the chart of USO. We've got our trend analysis chart with our signals. We've got the daily chart over here with our short-term, our cycle analysis. And crude's got a real kind of mixed market here. Overall, when you look at the bigger picture, the trend is down. We're stuck under the 200. We're stuck under the 50-day. We are kind of right at the 5-day as resistance and above the 20 days. So we got a real cluster of resistance and moving averages there. We're also stuck at this kind of gap window where it's come up and tagged that level, found resistance, and it is forming somewhat of a bear flag here. Now, when we look at our trend analysis chart, it is green bars, meaning we are in an uptrend. The market put in a bottom. Short term, we are trending higher. The big question is it going to find support and start to push up to fill this gap window, or are we going to complete this bear flag and pull back down into this support zone down here before it potentially finds a real bottom? Now, more or less yesterday, we saw the market pop up and rally. It tagged the 50-day moving average. Our short-term cycle yesterday was trading way up here in the overbought market condition. Actually, if we take a look at our short-term chart here, you can see we had more or less a cluster happening yesterday afternoon, and really at the open pretty much yesterday we had the key cycles up here kind of topping out, and that's where the market made that final little push, came up and hit our target for at 12.11. It ended up going to 12.13 and then reversed and sold off for the rest of the day. Just like we took our targets right up here on our first part of the position, we got the second one right up here. It's amazing how you can pinpoint these moves in the market. And I talked about it in an article that I posted last night, how the market likes to make kind of 1 to 3% moves repeatedly and correct. And that's what we did. We got about a 1%, we got a 2.7% on this one, and we're going to have to see what the market does. Again, the big picture of crude, very mixed, looks a little bearish when you look at the daily chart. Short-term bias, if we look, we still have a downward bias for crude over the next few days, which is why I was definitely excited to get out there, because I feel as though it could fade back down into these lows and end up triggering our stop, which once we hit our first target, we always move our stop back to break even to our entry point. If case price rolls over, we just get out with a small profit on the first half. We don't lose anything on the second half. We can always re-enter later. So we'll see what crude does going forward, and kind of take it one step at a time there. Now, if we take a look over at, let's go to the stock, the SP 500. More or less, it's got a cluster of cycle highs here in the market. If we just zoom back, we cycles. Now, more or less, if we take a look at the market here, we've got the market ended up getting overbought. We had all the cycles up here in the upper reversal zone, really waiting for some type of trend break and for things to start to go negative. And then we trended down, and then we got this cluster. Cluster lows stand out usually a lot more than cluster tops. A lot of times we'll just see the market will trade in a power zone. All the cycles in an uptrend will be in the upper zone. Very tough. You don't want to pick tops, but bottoms are usually more standout, and you can usually try and scale into them or get in after you've seen a cluster and you get some big reversal pop in the market. So we've seen that correction. Now we're back up. We do have, you can see when we get into these short-term clusters where all the market cycles top out. We had another one here a couple days ago where everything clustered, and we're seeing another pullback. The big question here is, are we going to see, is this just a minor pullback? We find some bottom over the next session or two and go back up, test above this 300, potentially create this support trend line that if it starts to break, it could be a great shorting opportunity. Or is the market going to take off? We're going to roll over here, and that's the big question. If we look at the VIX, the VIX is up again this morning. I'll share a link to the article I posted here. This is the type of analysis and charts we're going to start sharing in the new members area once we add the different layers here. There we go. If we take a look at the VIX, we are, let me just zoom back a little bit. I know there's a lot of lines on here. But more or less what we're looking at with the VIX is very similar. We're looking for these kind of cluster lows where the market comes in and puts in these, you want all the cycles down in the lower reversal zone. So we get them more or less over here. And then from there, we can see some pretty strong pops and moves in the market where we see these rallies start to take place. So far, we've had a bounce. The question is how long or how high will this one go? And that's where we are. If we draw a line across this, the pivot low we saw from 2 trading sessions ago, right across here, we're at a level where the VIX gets down to this area and it tends to find support. There's complacency or greed in the market, whatever you want to call it. People are just buying. They're not afraid of price rolling over. And more or less, we're getting into these cycle lows down at these levels, and we could start to see a deeper correction in the market. And the VIX is telling me we got to be very aware we might have a deeper correction than just a 3 or 5 day pullback in the market. So that's what we're going to be aware of. We'll see how things unfold over the next few sessions and look for some new trades, whether they're to the long or to the short side. All depends on how the market's going to evolve here. Let's take a look over at let me pull the dollar chart up real quick. Dollar up again today. It is really moving higher. If you take a look here, it had this nice 3-wave correction, very similar to what we saw over here. It's big enough to cleanse the market, shake things up, and then it goes back up to push to new highs. We've had this nice 3-wave correction, breaking a bunch of these this previous pivot low and these ones over here, very similar to what we saw back last year, and now it's starting to work its way higher. And if the dollar continues to rise, obviously metals are going to be under pressure. This is what we've been expecting for the last really couple of weeks, expecting gold and miners and all them to take kind of a pause here. And if you look at the chart, we've got our key resistance areas. This blue line we drew on here months ago, and all these blue lines. And of course, price came up, poked through the level, sold off, tagged it again, broke through it and reversed back down. We're in more or less this trading range at this point, but we could still very easily fall down somewhere into this full trading range depending how the market goes. We might start to see it correct and pick up speed to the downside and put in a more significant bottom later. We'll just have to see how it goes. But overall, gold still having a series of rallies, consolidation, rally, consolidation. I am expecting higher prices, but it might not happen as everyone's expecting any day now. It could take several weeks, could even take months for it to really continue to break out. If you take a look over at silver, silver up 0.25% this morning. Again, it's in an uptrend. It is trading more or less above all the key moving averages. It's under the 5 and the 20-day. It is forming a little bit of a potential bear flag here. I do feel as though we could see another flush down in the overall precious metals market and kind of flush things down more. So I'm not getting too excited here to get into the metals, but they all are trading down near support and a little bit oversold at this point. And same with miners. Let's just pull up the GDXJ. GDXJ consolidating, lots of volatility. If you look at the price gap, huge gap down, big sell-off, then a big gap up, huge rally, little doji day, and then we saw a huge gap down, and then the market rallied all the way back up. This is really big volatility. Typically, when we see big volatility, we start to see the market struggle. Usually, big volatility is huge gaps and runs to the upside, followed by big gaps down. It's usually instability, and that's when we start to see the market work itself out and usually find a reversal. So we could still see this pull back and consolidate more. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it is still in an uptrend. We've had a rally, a pullback, a rally. It is consolidating. And the question is, how long is it going to consolidate? How far is it going to pull back before it breaks and starts to take another run higher? Taking a look over at, let's go to natural gas real quick, down 1% this morning. Overall, we did get in here. We caught this pop, hit our first target, and then got stopped out on the balance for a small profit. It ended up popping and taking off without us right after, hitting our second target. Obviously, we weren't in for this, but we're letting the market pull back, and it might provide us another long entry here soon. We got a short-term momentum cycle pulling down. We're going to be settling down into the 5 and the 20-day. And our cycle analysis here on the 30-minute chart, we've gone from a downtrend red bars to now we are orange. And if we see a pullback in the next session or two, we might end up getting green bars and potentially a buy signal to get long. Natural gas, if you look at this chart, very strong move. It has potential for a really strong momentum setup, meaning we could see this. We've had the pop, quick 3 or 4 day pullback, and then it could have another very strong pop up to the upside as well. So we might be looking to get long if we get into an oversold dip down into this area. Last but not least, let's pull up Bitcoin real quick. Not that I'm looking to trade it at this point. If we look at Bitcoin, it pulled back to the 20-day. It's kind of rallied its way back up. Again, overall, high volatility play here all over the place. I would expect it to more or less consolidate into some big range or into this range. I think it's got lots of potential to continue to flag out here, build a more definitive, more or less pennant formation, continuation formation. But the way Bitcoin works, it's very emotional. It has a lot of non-traders in it, so it's extremely emotional with just the average Joe piling in. So we could, for all we know, get another one of these huge. It just keeps spiking up higher and higher. Very fast moving, and at this point I feel as though it's at resistance, and I think it's going to continue to channel down sideways somewhere in here for a little bit, which would be a very bullish sign. It would be a breather, and as it starts to break above a falling trend line, we could start to see have an opportunity to get back in with a lower level of risk, so we'll be able to put in a definitive level to get out if it starts to roll over. Anyways, that's really it for this morning, and I'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye bye.